Hello, Sailor Scouts and Super Saiyans alike. This is Morgan Straughan Comnick here, and I'm going to give you a little sneak peek of Chapter 1 of the newest book of mine. It is the second book in the duology of the Hunter and the Bringer series, and it's called Monsters and Mortals. I don't have the physical copy yet. It is so close to being on its way, and I'm so excited. You'll definitely see a picture of the cover, though, if you go to the links below on my site. And also it will be on Amazon and all the other book retail places that my other ones are in, but I also share the links on those as well. So I don't want to spoil the opening because I will admit the first book in the Hunter and Bringer series ends in a cliffhanger. So this picks up immediately right after that. I scrolled down a few pages and got to some good action, I'm thinking. So basically what you need to know without really spoiling anything is Val and Jeremy, remember, they're from two rivaling, that's always a hard word to say, monster organizations. Val is from the Hunters, who exterminate the monsters to save mankind. Jeremy's from the Bringers. They try to capture the monsters and, rehabilitate them, research, all that fun stuff. So they have this joint mission that's been going on all through the first book. It is still continuing, which is great. for the readers, not for them. And at the very end of the last book, again, this does not spoil anything with the cliffhanger, but they did have a pretty big blowout with each other. And now they're moving on because there was information that their threat, this very strong monstrum that they are on joint assignment for, just attacked a whole bunch of people. So they have to go and deal with that because it's part of their job. So we're going to see what kind of adventures start from them leaving the United States and tracking down this vile creature. All right, so here we go. So this is a little bit of Chapter 1 from the second book in the Hunter and the Bringer series called Monsters and Mortals. And I'm reading it off our tablet mini. So I apologize if I have to keep tapping it for that. After Jeremy and mine's latest blowout at the Hunter's base, Kessler and Galeon received a direct order from Chief that we needed to investigate a monstrum attack, a tragic massacre and kidnappings that align with what we know about the spree this llama has been commencing. We took the Charger, a sleek and large fancy helicopter that belongs to the Bringers, heading to the boot of Italy, the reports saying that the monstrum was heading to the coast of Greece. And Greece would have a slew of problems for us, as it is littered with monstrums of numerous myths. A small wave of turbulence snapped me from the mindless flashes of all that has happened. My eyes watered annoyingly. I wiped them away, yearning to lose myself into nothingness of the sky that was drowning in the start of a stormy sunset. With this movement, a glint of the final words I heard the organization ring strongly in my ears. When I was leaving, after we inspected the Charger and did our supplies checklist, Madame Edric, the mother of my chief, who is a medical leader in her Cherokee tribe, beckoned me over with a steam of lilac. It was hard to focus on her, but I drank in her kindly image, ashamed when I absorbed the sadness in her eyes that were gazing solely at me. Like a grandmother, she patted my hand, its warmth drawing me to heed her serious tone. Words I knew were spoken to her through her ancient spirits. Fog will obscure your path, but you can never evade your journey. I know you. You will never halt the walk, but venture forward, cautiously, slowly, looking over your shoulder. The only real question I have for you is this: will you plod, or will you fly, in order to find the one who dances with you? Where are we heading to, calculator boy? The scratchiness of my weapons expert's voice lightly tapped me out of the mental fog in which the madam's riddle engulfed me. I inclined my head slightly in order to hear any new agenda on our endeavor. I was getting tired of sinking into this brain pit. I could almost hear Kessler clawing into his armrest, his nails digging into the leather from nerves. Crackingly, he told us the latest information. You see, we are going to Bari in Italy, to the scene of the incident. The Italian division of the Hunters has blocked it off for us from the police and public after an investigation of their own. The scene was on a cliffside outside one of its most popular beaches. Hearing Jeremy speak was like a surge of electricity jolting through every cell, standing my arm a hair on end. Kessler gulped audibly, loud enough that I didn't have to move to look at him. Well, yes, but the city itself is famous for its white cliffs, even having a cliffside restaurant. Many of their houses are built on top of them as well. The attack was not directly in a tourist area, but about half a mile away. We are lucky that it was late at night, but there was a celebration going on near a semi-secluded cliff of about 40 innocents. Bad luck for them. An excellent meal and pleasure trip for this jerk. Llama. Galen finished in his own crude but not unfaithful truth. So this book is 17 plus, just like the first one. So there is some language, a little more than the first one. And again, there'll be some adult content as well, and some, a little bit of battle gore, obviously. So I will not be saying them out loud just because I have the community I work with, but be warned that they are there. So Galen did not say jerk, because Galen's a very rough and grizzled character. I'll let you imagine some of the flowery words that he could be saying in his place. Sorry, sidebar. Continuing. I could feel Jeremy's gaze bearing into my cheek, and it was getting more difficult to blankly stare through the looking glass. I yearned to be Alice and hop into a new realm, even a trippy one like Wonderland. At least I was used to doing 6 impossible to mortals things before breakfast already. Steadying myself, I let out a long sigh and focused my vision on the dull plush padding wall of the fake seat in front of me. So our objective is to meet the Italian hunters at this location of the incident and do our thing. Then we will compare findings to their base if allowed access. My wispy voice sounded like it was in a cave somewhere, but there was my usual authoritativeness mission tone I used. Lord, it felt like I had aged 100 years. That took way more effort than it should have. Jeremy had his mouth partly open, gawking at me while his hand squeezed the armrest until his knuckles were white. I refused to look at him head on, but I kept an eye on him now, pretending to be indifferent about him being here, although in actuality I loathed and feared him being near me. The squeaking of his seat made me give him a small percentage more of my sight to notice he was leaning forward by his torso, but his limbs were glued in place, making him look gangly. I know we have been dealing with this vampire case first, but this happened on our soil, and I guess you guys can share information. But why would we not be welcome to return to their base with them after our investigation? For cross-referencing, it makes sense. I stared ahead, not wanting to state the obvious to the rest of us in the helicopter, but I guess Galen couldn't resist being the oh-so-lovable butt that he was. He snorted, then honored Jeremy with the answer. We can get in just fine. That'll be tricky. Jeremy looked back and forth between all three of us, dragging his sentence out like the words were sticking to the roof of his mouth. Yeah, I can see that if this was a normal case, but our branches decided for us to work together, so I'm part of this assignment. By default, I should be able to have at least basic entry, since I have as much experience, knowledge, and exposure to this monster as Val. I mean, Agent Hemingway. His eyes were bouncing between all of us, not sure where to land. Kessler yelped and ducked his head down, twiddling his thumbs from stressed nerves. I was still refusing to acknowledge him in the aircraft, so once again, Galen had to break it to him in his gentle way. Look here, High School Musical. By some fluke, with God and the powers of nature, we needed to work together this one time to snuff out this SOB monstrum. I'm still not sure what you bring to the table, but our bosses agonized over this never-before ordeal. Just because we're forced to see you PETA for monsters in our halls, biting our tongues each encounter, doesn't mean the other branches around the world are going to agree, nor do they legally have to. They have their own rules. In fact, I can't imagine Chief Beryl going around and blabbing her jaws about how we have a bringer partnered with our Lady Fair over here on this assignment. So if they don't invite you in, don't get all butthurt. Leave your ego and pride at the door and chill. Remember what we're here for, and if I hear any more complaining, I will sew your trap myself, and I can tell you I'll use a rusty dagger instead of a needle to do it. And the Razzie for the most motivational speech goes to Jeremy, to my surprise, didn't argue, throw a fit, or even interrupt. He just listened and absorbed Galian's brutally honest words. After a dragging 20 seconds, he threw his body hard back to his plush seat, tossed his hands in the air, and moaned, "Well, good to know now how picky you hunters are, even internationally. Darn." His tone was slightly amused, but also hurt and annoyed. Still, his focus was true, same as ours, stopping this llama as quickly as possible. I leaned my head once more on the cool glass. Half of me longed to land soon, to get my bearings, but once on the ground, I would have to hit my mission running. And I had a feeling once we started the sprint, there would be no pit stop. We were in ancient monstrum territory now. A harsh howl brushed past the window and entangled the helicopter in a rumbling sound, the gales buckling the machine slightly. To most, it would seem like a flash of extreme turbulence or the dawning of a windstorm. However, my ears perked up on instinct, sensing the otherworldly wrongness of this gust. My mind became alert in seconds, a surprise with the heavy mental fog in which I was drowning. The seat I was in squeaked in protest when I straightened up better to get a look at my bearings. Kessler and Galen looked a bit surprised by the sudden vibrations of the aircraft, but their eyes gave nothing away. Jeremy must have felt what I did, for he shifted in his seat as well, studying the direction from which the wind was coming. I suppose all that top-notch training meant he was as keen as I was about feeling the darkness, the invisible wrongness that monstrum's auras tend to radiate in the shadows. Jerk on a stick craned his head without overly moving from his gripping the armrest position towards his hole of a window to gaze at the ocean below. After 5 seconds of him trying to close his mouth, he swiveled his head back to face me dead on, his sea glass green eyes draining of color and looking like rainwater. You guys? You might want to take a look out there. The sea is a foamy swirl of roughness." I didn't think twice about taking his suggestion to heart, hopping out of my seat so I could land on my knees to get a better view. Welp, I have to admit it. Darrington's description was indeed accurate to the point of chilling poetic. The deep blue waves churned in anger, the current so strong that the forces were swirling in many spirals on top of each other, confused on where to go, but wanting to dominate the waters around it. The middle point of the froth was sinking deep into itself, easily able to fit several 10-story buildings all side by side. This was hella bad. As I pressed my face oh so attractively to the glass, whips of wind wrapped around the blades of the charger and tugged on them for dear life on my side. We all fell flat on the ground, the helicopter leaning towards Jeremy and Galian's side. For minor support, I grabbed the metal leg of my chair that was bolted down, my hands going numb to keep from ramming into Jeremy's gut on the other side. Galian was concocting a slew of curses as if performing a spell, and Kessler was trying not to whimper as he focused on searching for pieces of his equipment, counting off the keys he was finding from his typewriter. At this point, our pilot was able to get the charger mostly back in control after a minute. I was surprised we heard him with the roaring gales hitting the metal, but he did holler in distress soon after. "I don't know what to do!" Well, that's never reassuring to hear. Another wave of air punched for the helicopter, and I somersaulted backwards with the force, slamming into Jeremy, who was on his side under his seat's walkway to the window. He grunted and then gave me a strained smile, strained smile, guilty the light blinking a small light in his dull green eyes. "Thanks for dropping in, my lady." I ignored his advance to talk to me, grateful my hunter will to fight was so strong. "Get off me!" I shoved his face away from me and got on my knees, ready to attempt to crawl over him so I could get a better view of the raging ocean from his side. I didn't get far from my travels. Before I lifted my knee to step over him, the helicopter buckled hard again and I was dragged down, Jeremy catching me awkwardly in his arms. We were tangled on our side in a half-sitting position, forced to gawk at each other. My fury at not having control of my limbs and being held by this guy was making my face an uncontrollable worm. "Back again? How can I help you this time, princess?" Again, his voice and expression was strained, but he was trying to get back to our original routine, a more comedic one in extreme situations. I wasn't sure I had the patience for this, and the fact we were getting attacked in the air was not a good place to test this fury. I really didn't like flying or water. I felt trapped. "Ugh! Let me just freaking get past you!" I exclaimed, with ire before even giving him a chance to react, this time crawling over him before I was beaten by Mother Nature again. A massive wave shot from the ocean below and smacked into the window, white foam sliding violently down the glass like a handprint. The boom from the contact shook the flying machine we were encased in, but luckily didn't shake us more. Still, the fact that a wave could shoot up with such precision to touch a helicopter made it clear that Mother Nature was being altered by a nasty puppet master. Jeremy placed his palms flat on the wall of the Charger on either side of my waist, spread out so he wasn't touching me, but I could feel his body heat catty-corner from behind. The scene in front of my fishbowl was able to distract me from the fact that he was so close. Well, about 95% of my mind, at least. That's one mother trucker wave out there, he whistled lowly, his voice grumbling. Obviously, it's not natural. Eggs for brains. I snarked after a heavy sigh, our eyes glued to the storm raging intensely in the real world, searching for any clues on what we were dealing with and how we could get out without endangering Kessler and our pilot. Galen could take care of himself. Son of an itch, Galen lashed out as his teeth mashed together. I could hear him and Kessler shuffling to regain balance, but I dared not look back. The vastness of the hole from the sea was expanding and becoming the color of pitch, a void of nothingness. However, from the rumble of the world and the now near-deafening howling of the wind, I knew this was not the case. As if my thoughts called, the beast, a shadowed mass, erupted from the enraged ocean, bursting from the waves with a vengeance. The monstrum that emerged from it was easily 60 feet tall, nearly flying out of the water. It was easily as thick as a whale, but was also somehow lean like a Chinese serpent of legend. Segmented into coils of murky blue and seaweed green scales, it roared with a disgusting voice, its fangs easily as tall as Jeremy. Purple thick saliva was dripping and plopping loudly into the sea. Embedded above its filmy yellow eyes was a fuzzy cluster of fur. A forked tongue licked the air in time with its razor-sharp flippers and cat-like claws. A centis, I breathed out, awe and irritation ringing in my tone. Not familiar with that one, Jeremy stated without shame, as if it was a simple fact. Of course he didn't. It's the sea serpent from the Greek story of Perseus, where he rode on Pegasus to slay the monstrum to save his future wife Andromeda. Hercules also was said to encounter one. I'm not sure if there's only one or if this is an ancestor, but this guy is the real deal, and he's really far from home. Jarvis Zero clicked his tongue, glancing at the monstrosity outside, but his eyes were lighter than I'd seen in a while. Leave it to you, my vanilla cupcake, to know the origin of all the Greek mythology just by looking at this demonic creature. I rolled my eyes in response. It's called reading a book every once in a while. Heavens knows you need to, or at least listen to something other than that droning of your cocky voice. I love Greek mythology anyway. I even teach college classes about it in the summer. I huffed out some air as the wind whooshed through the now larger cracks in the window side. That wasn't good. As I pointed my finger toward the fracture, my voice was sucked into a vacuum tunnel, and glass shattered around us, one shard scraping against my cheeks, so it lodged and trickled a thin line of blood. I ducked from the small explosion so my skin would not get any more intense prickles, Jeremy placing his arms between us like a shield, pieces fusing in his shirt sleeve like diamond beading. All that could be heard was the pounding, deafening roaring of gales invading the inner spaces of the helicopter, it whipping our hair in sporadic patterns due to the tunnel pathway it had. The deep bellow of the centis below fused into a sickening harmony with the rage of the skies. With these new vibrations added, the latch of the enforced door rattled with shaking, clacking. When our attention shifted to this, the centis burst a mighty pillar of pressured water that hit the bottom of the Charger, the geysher rumbling under our feet and making the still-shut door quake even more. The high-pitched sound that followed shattered my chest even though the air suction took over my thoughts. We were either going to be sucked out of the helicopter and plummeted into the ocean, or crash into the water below, most likely being devoured by this fat snake. Either way, a watery grave was in the cards, and I wasn't going down like that. I was a horrid swimmer, and I didn't want to die embarrassingly. Well, Jeremy dragged out, his shout, barely audible above the storms of sounds in our flying metal carriage. Spots of blood were poking out through his dress shirt from the gales he was trying to block from harming me further. I backed away carefully, a foot from his shadow, to stand beside him, staring down at the creature that was throwing a tantrum so giant that it was chopping up the waves. I think we need a plan, my dear. Okay, and I will stop there. So, guys, thank you for listening to part of Chapter 1 of Monsters and Mortals, which is book 2 in the Hunter and Bringer duology series. And it's going to be out super soon, so please go to my website, which also has links to all my social medias. You'll be getting updates on what's going on. If you're interested in buying a copy of any of my books, you can also go to Amazon or the other book retailers below and get information on that. So thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed listening to the more adventures of Val and Jeremy. I apologize again. I'm not the best at reading for a long period of time, so hopefully everything was okay for you. All right, thanks for the support. Know that you are fantastic and you will dominate the world with your epicness. All right, take care. Bye.